For this shawl pattern, you'll need 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn at about 100 grams each, and you'll need them in 2 different colors. The colors can be contrasting or complementary. You'll see more of a pop with this shawl if you use 2 colors that are contrasting. You will also need a Tunisian crochet hook, scissors, a tapestry needle, stitch markers, and you can have tape measure if you'd like to keep track of how things are moving, but it's not necessary. A little bit about this Tunisian crochet hook. We're going to be using a 4.5 millimeter crochet hook with a 22-inch cable. This should be plenty for the shawl. Towards the very end, you will be scrunching it up a little bit, but I found it really convenient as opposed to using 2 cables together or a longer cable hook. This is the Tunisian crochet hook from Knitter's Pride, part of the Ginger set. I really like it because of the point, but use whatever Tunisian crochet hook you like as long as it's a 4.5 millimeter. So this is the final version of this shawl, and it was worked up in that fingering weight yarn. And as you can see, it has really nice drape. It's nice and soft, and it has these sections of Tunisian knit stitch, and then the sections of the lace, which is extended Tunisian knit stitch. Now, it's really important that you do use the fingering weight yarn, even though in the demonstration I'm using DK, in order to get this really nice, lovely drape and to have the shawl be the size as described. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking you through how to make this shawl. The color transitions will be discussed in the pattern, and information about the pattern can be found on the blog post, which I'll link below. I'll also add in, if you're not familiar with the Tunisian knit stitch, I'll add in a link to a video tutorial to teach you all about how to make the Tunisian knit stitch. Because fingering weight yarn is very hard to record, for the demo, I'm going to be using this Paintbox Cotton DK, which is a little bit of a larger weight yarn, so you'll be able to see it more clearly, and a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. So I'm going to get everything together and I'll meet you back to begin this pattern. I'm going to begin with the slip knot, and we're going to go ahead and chain 2. So 1 and 2. Normally in Tunisian crochet, we will work in the back bumps, which is what we're going to do. And this live loop is considered the first loop on the hook, and you skip the back bump. But we're going to go ahead and start working our decreases right away. So I flipped it over and you can see the back bump, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up a stitch, yarn over, pull through. And then the next one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go through the back bump, yarn over, pull through, and I'll have 3 loops on my hook, just like that. And now we're going to do a standard return pass. Throughout this whole pattern, you will be doing a standard return pass. So you're going to, for the first one, is just yarn over and pull through 1 loop, and then you yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Oops, just like that. So now I have my live loop, which counts for my first one. I have my second loop right there, and then I have the end here. So to begin now, next, I'm going to, this first loop counts for this first stitch. I'm going to find that second stitch, and let me get a needle here and I'll show you. Right here is the vertical bar for that first stitch. You can see I can go underneath here, and behind it is another back vertical bar. So for the Tunisian knit stitch, you will go between those 2 vertical bars, and you're going to go ahead, yarn over and pull up a loop, and we'll keep that loop on our hook. Now the second stitch, always starting from the right side, is going to be your increase. So I'm going to go back into that vertical bar, yarn over and pull through, and now I have 3 loops on my hook. For the last loop on the hook, you're going to turn your work sideways, and you're going to look for the two leftmost bars, and you're going to go through them, yarn over, pull through. And now I have 4 loops on my hook. You're going to yarn over, pull through 1, then go ahead, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through 2. Now when you're working this pattern, there's a couple things I want you to focus on. The first of which is going to be to keep this loop nice and tight. If it's really loose, you will not be able to, you'll have a kind of a loose jagged edge and it will not look very pretty. All right, so our first loop is here that goes along with this stitch. Here's our second loop. Again, we're going to go through the vertical bars, yarn over, pull through, and then remember this is our increase, so we're going to go from right to left through that vertical bar, yarn over, pull through, just like that. And take a second, make sure those are nice and snug. We'll go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then again we're at our last two most. We're going to find those two bars on the side and go through both. Yarn over, pull through. I now have 5 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over, pull through 1, pull through 2, pull through 2, pull through 2, and then finally pull through 2 the last time. Again, make that nice and snug. Then here's my second stitch, knit stitch through there, yarn over, pull through, and then remember our increase. Go through, Tunisian simple stitch, just like that. Now as you're working this pattern, the simple stitch from the row before is a little bit smaller, so it's easy to mix. So I always make sure after I do my increase, I look for that Tunisian simple stitch from the row before and do my Tunisian knit stitch in there, just like that. And you have 4, Tunisian knit stitch 5, and then last Tunisian stitch through both vertical bars, pull through. I'm going to go ahead, return pass, pull through 1 for the first time, and then pull through 2 for all the remaining loops, just like that. We're going to do one more together. Let me get a little bit more yarn. We're going to do one more together, and then I'm going to work on this a little bit, and then I'm going to show you how to do the lace portion of the stitch. So pull that loop nice and tight, find your first stitch, which is right here, and there's your little Tunisian knit, there's your little Tunisian simple from the row before. So we're going to remember that that's there. Go through your knit, your first stitch, Tunisian knit, increase, Tunisian simple, and then find that little stitch back here that now wants to hide, and we're going to go ahead and knit in there. Then into the next, knit, and then into the next, knit, Tunisian knit, and then Tunisian last stitch. Yarn over, pull through. Remember, pull through 1 for the first, and then pull through 2 for all the remaining loops on this row. Just like that. So you can see how it's coming together, and the way that we do the increases here is going to make a really pretty edge. Don't worry about that one too much when we do our border on the side. That'll cinch up nice and tight. Okay, so I'm going to continue working, and I'm going to meet you back once I have a little bit more and show you how to do the lace portions of this shawl. So for the lace portions of this shawl, what we're going to do is we're going to begin with doing a chain 1. And now basically you're going to do everything that you did on the previous row, but add a chain 1 to it. And that's how you make an extended knit stitch and an extended Tunisian simple stitch. So in our second stitch right there, just like before, we're going to go ahead, do a knit stitch, but we're going to chain 1. And then we're still going to do our increases. So we're going to go ahead and Tunisian simple and chain 1. And then we're going to find that hidden little simple stitch from the previous row, do our knit stitch, chain 1, just like that. So you can see knit, chain 1, knit, chain 1, chain 1, and we're going to keep going, knit, chain 1, and I'm going to do this until the end of the row. Now when we get to the end of the row, we're going to do our last Tunisian stitch, just like before, but we're going to add a chain 1. So we're going to do an extended last stitch. So there you go. And then I'm going to turn my work, find that 2 side vertical bars, yarn over, pull through, just like for a last stitch, but we're going to chain 1. All right, so now we have the first row of the lace, and it doesn't look like much now, but keep going and you'll see how pretty it turns out. So as always, we're going to do our normal return pass. And actually, let me take a second here to talk to you a little bit about the color changes. When you start working on the color changes, you can actually, we're going to be doing them on the return pass, and you can actually, if we go and undo this, you can actually go in through here, one way to do it, and instead of using this yarn, pick up your next yarn and use that to pull through. It will make the last stitch a different color, but I find that it works really well as you're doing the alternate rows to have a very smooth edge because it's the stitch before, so it gets hidden here. The other way to do it is you can also do it on the return pass. So in this case, we're doing the chain one, and then you would drop this and pick up the next bit of yarn. So return pass is normal, so we're going to yarn over, pull through two. Now don't get confused either when you're doing the extended simple stitch that chain one counts as your first pull through. Don't forget that you have to always do the pull through one there. Sometimes that can get a little bit confusing because you feel like you've done a chain one, but that chain one is part of the stitch. So we're going to continue doing our return pass just like this. And then we get to our last one, and remember, we're going to chain one to begin the next stitch. And I want to show you one more row because I want to show you now when you get to the last Tunisian stitch where you're going to work. So again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find our second stitch. We're going to go ahead and extended Tunisian knit, followed by extended Tunisian simple, just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and continue doing our extended knits until the end. The nice thing with the stitch counts with this pattern is that for every row you're increasing one. So it's an easy way to keep track of your stitch counts too. All right, Tunisian knit, chain one, Tunisian knit, chain one. So normally we go through these bottom two, but this time you're going to go through the chain here. Let me show you. So this whole thing is the last Tunisian stitch. This is the chain that we normally go through. Instead, you're going to be going through the chain that you made that's a little bit higher. If you go through this stitch, you're going to end up pulling your work down. So find that chain that you did, yarn over, pull through just like you would for a last stitch, and add a chain one. And there you go. So I'm going to do a couple more rows like this, and then I'm going to show you if you want to do an optional side border, how we're going to do that. So I've done another row or two, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do, before we do the side border, I'm going to show you how we do the Tunisian knit stitch bind off. So you have your live loop. You're going to go ahead and go in like you would for a Tunisian knit stitch, and when you pull up, you're going to slip through the previous loop, just like that. And we're not doing any increases, so you can just go ahead and work in the next one. Yarn over, pull through the loop, just like that. Yarn over, pull through the loop, just like that. And what you're going to find is it's going to give you a pretty little braid that will make a nice edge. And that's similar to what we're going to be doing on the side, so I'll show you that too. So we're going to just keep going. Yarn over, pull through, Tunisian knit stitch, yarn over, pull through your loop, just like that. And if you pull this too tight, when you go ahead and you block your fingering weight yarn, you're going to find that it's going to make it tight and you're going to have less drape and the shawl will not open up as much. So we're going to continue just like that, just like that. And we're going to keep going just like that. And when you get to the last one, remember, you're going to be working in that second chain, pull through, just like that. And so now you have this pretty little bind off. So now we're going to turn our work and we're going to work right on the border. And when you're working this border, what you're going to notice is there are areas of extended knit stitch and there are areas of just regular knit stitch. For the areas of extended knit stitch, you're going to want to work 2 stitches into each row. So let me show you. Now we're going to leave this live loop on, but we're going to go, and that's going to count for our bind off row. So we're going to go ahead and work into the first, pull up a loop, and then since this is an extended, we're going to find another area right there, yarn over, pull up a loop. And we're just going to keep collecting them as we go. So now 2 stitches, so 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, and now we are at our knit stitch rows. So these are just going to be just 1 like this. So 1 for every row. Nice and simple. And we're just pulling up a loop and just collecting our loops. So I'm going to keep doing this until I get to the end. And if you were worried about your little extra loop here, this is where we're going to fix it. So go ahead, go in there, and then I'm going to try to get the loop, because I want to close that up. I'm going to go through 2 little loops there and then pull through, and that's it. So just like a standard return pass, I'm going to go ahead, yarn over, pull through 1, pull through 2, and I'm going to keep pulling through 2. When I get back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Tunisian knit stitch bind off, just like I did for the top, and that's going to give me the really pretty little braided edge too. Let me get a little bit more yarn. Now a couple of tips for this shawl. Again, use a fingering weight yarn. It's not going to be as nice if you don't. And you're also going to want to make sure that, again, you pull these 3 loops nice and tight when you're working. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and do my Tunisian knit stitch bind off. I'm going to go through as I would for a knit stitch, yarn over, pull through just like that. Again, through here, knit stitch, pull through your loop. And it's going to create that same pretty little braid that we were seeing in the other area. Now what I found is you're going to get a little bit of a pretty wave as you work your increases on this side here, okay? If you decide that you want to do a border along this edge, you'll lose that wave. That's the first point. And the second point is, remember, this is still an extended Tunisian crochet row, so you're going to have to work 2 stitches in here. And it's not going to be as nice as it was on this end where we had the chain, because you don't have that obvious chain. So what I did is I would work, if you decide to do that, I would work through both bumps and then, or both loops here, and then work through 1 loop for the second one. And that way you were able to still do 2 stitches, 2 loops for each of the extended Tunisian crochet stitches. Besides losing the wave, doing a border along this side will tighten your shawl down a lot, and you'll end up with something that doesn't open as much, and the lace is not going to be as visible. You can kind of see that the lace is nice and open on this edge, and even our border here is going to make your lace smaller. In the pattern, I do go over all the ways to transition colors, and there's a lot more tips and tricks in there. I'll put a link to the pattern to the blog post below so you can follow along with the blog post. But you can see how pretty our border is here and how pretty our border is going to be here. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. I hope it'll help guide you through the pattern. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're enjoying these crochet tutorials, please do subscribe to my channel. Thank you and happy crocheting!